So, you want to write an essay, eh? Well, lucky for you, I know just the recipe. Like any good baker, you are nothing without your trusty equipment. A little entertainment to keep the brain engaged, some motivation to keep you going when times get tough, and to top it off, an unwavering determination to do your best with a can-do attitude. Alright, you have your equipment. Now it's time to start. And congrats, the hard part's done. Deciding to start is where 90% of people fail, and you did it, so good job. Okay, like any good work of literary art, you start with an idea, which leads to a thesis. Alrighty, any second now? What's that? You can't think of anything? Geez, I gave you a whopping 10 seconds too. Well, whatever. Just put something down. It's fine. Okay, that is certainly a thesis. Listen, I'm not here to judge. I'm just the narrator. A thesis is a thesis, and hey, you can always go and change it later, or just cover it in icing and pray for the best. Who's to say? I wouldn't worry about it too much, because even if you have a crappy thesis, as long as you can make a valid, cohesive argument and convince your reader that you're right and everyone else sucks, you'll be good. And to do that, we're going to need some pretty solid evidence. You're having trouble finding something that matches your thesis? Well, whose fault is that? I mean, you wrote the damn thing. Here, just let me look at it. Ah, look, you see, in Act 4, Scene 3, it uses the word the, and your thesis also uses the word the. I mean, you can't get more on the nose than that. It's perfect. And I would just copy, like, the whole paragraph, and then the paragraph surrounding that paragraph for good measure. Your reader should feel as if they're biting into the source material itself. Okay, we're in the home stretch now. All that's left is the analysis. It may seem daunting, but you can really just BS some stuff, trust me. As long as it sounds fancy and connects to your thesis, your reader will be none the wiser. Okay, that about does it. Stick that baby in the oven, and in a bit, you should have a pretty solid first draft. And looks like it's done. Wow, I think we did some really great work. Oh, I guess it could use a little icing. Good writing takes time, and when you rush through the necessary steps, especially the beginning ones, you establish a weak foundation for what comes next, because writing built from straw topples from the blows of peer reviewers and professors and you the morning after you turn it in. Alternatively, when you take the time to establish a precedent of half-decency, you're doing future you a favor that he will be, without a doubt, very thankful for. In order to do so, however, you must have the patience to be confused at the text, lost in your own ideas, and frustrated at your wording, and the only thing harder than being patient with others is being patient with yourself. I personally take over 9 hours to write my essays, with only half of that time actually writing the paper itself. I will sit and think about the assignment, the text relating to the assignment, the grading rubric, and general ideas of what I want to write about, and that lasts about an hour. I will search for evidence, which often coincides with having to relearn what exactly the text is talking about and clearing any confusion, and that's another hour. And then my favorite part, I open a notepad document and just write. Anything and everything goes, punctuation and grammar are optional, and 90% of it will be unusable in the actual essay, but simply getting every thought and idea written down somewhere as a sort of rough draft is more helpful in the long run than any rush draft. Because there is a big difference between a rough draft and a rush draft. The former will eventually be good, but the latter, no matter how much icing or how many sprinkles you cover it with, will always be sucky in principle. Another 2 hours go by, and after a total of 4 hours, I have a rough draft. It's not necessarily efficient, but it gets the job done. At that point, the rest of the writing is straightforward in comparison. It's just about putting it together. I often think of it like Legos, but with no instructions. Everything I need is there, it's just lacking the organization and pizzazz that takes it to another level. But with enough trial and error, everything will fall into place. This is where I think having good writing sense comes into play, being able to know if something sounds good versus bad, clear versus choppy, educated versus unsure. Take this example from one of the drafts of my Othello essay. Just as Othello became the animal he was characterized as, he too became the evil man he was presumed to be, due to his actions during the fifth act. Now compare it to the final version. Just as Othello developed into the animal he was characterized as, he too became the evil man he was presumed to be. The message in theory was the same, but the change in delivery was what helped improve the clarity and improve overall effectiveness. Using the word became insinuates it was an instantaneous transformation, while developed into really highlights how it was a gradual process. Additionally, I had already mentioned Othello's actions in the fifth act earlier in the essay, so why repeat it and sound redundant? Even though I knew what I was trying to say in the first draft, I can't guarantee that my reader will connect the same dots. Will they misinterpret? Will they get confused? Those are the thoughts that go into my revisions. Thus, good writing sense requires perspective. You must imagine yourself in the shoes of your reader. Okay, so how exactly do you gain good writing sense and perspective? Well, having ample experience with writing contributes to good writing sense, helping you detect awkward moments in your writing and enabling you to accurately fix them. Good writing rarely happens on the first try, and even if something seems good in the moment, the next word, sentence, or even paragraph may force your hand to abandon what was otherwise a solid idea for the benefit of the whole paper. Having the humility and wisdom to abandon a good moment for the grand movement, to sacrifice a pawn to make your other pieces dynamic, takes both experience and guts, in my opinion. Take this example from the script of this very video essay. Essentially, I wanted to mention how getting good sleep and giving yourself enough time to look at your writing with a fresh perspective, void of any deceptive novelty, would be highly beneficial. However, there wasn't really a good place for me to mention it while still maintaining flow. I didn't want it to sound forced or like I was trying to list off a bullet point, so I scrapped it, even though I thought it was important. Thus, I abandoned a good point for the betterment of the paper. Though I am mentioning it now, so that's kind of meta, I guess. But hey, I got to kill two birds with one stone by saying my idea and making another point at the same time. Now that's good writing sense. But what really separates the boys from the men is being able to take on the constructive criticism and feedback of others. Like I mentioned earlier, good writing sense requires you to put yourself in the shoes of your reader to have a wider perspective. Well, what better way to achieve that than by actually getting feedback from your reader? Easier said than done. Us humans seem to default to the mindset of I'm always right and anyone who disagrees is a dumbass, but being able to put your ego aside for just a few minutes will make a world of a difference. That being said, I was recently writing an essay for a scholarship in which I needed to propose an event that we could implement on campus to increase school spirit and further our mission statement. As someone who volunteers a lot, I very emphatically wrote about a volunteer-a-thon where students could compete in friendly competition and help the community and win prizes, the whole 9 yards. To my dismay, however, I was told by several peers that essentially no one would care about this event but me. They worded it more verbosely and sugarcoated it more than that, but that was the general feedback I received. I was kind of pissed at first, but I thought about it for a few minutes and ended up more or less agreeing with the sentiment. Alas, I was too far into writing to go back, and the only other idea I had was increasing accessibility to free feminine hygiene products, and I didn't feel as if I was in a knowledgeable enough position to effectively argue that point. But what I did end up doing was altering my conclusion to acknowledge the naivete of the whole proposal, that it would probably flop, but that I was still passionate enough to defend it. It's that self-awareness that I hope will salvage a kinda crappy idea in an otherwise good essay. So I guess what you could pull from that personal anecdote is that not all feedback has to be followed to a T, but you should try to harvest something of value from it even if you disagree. That was kind of bars. That was kind of fire. That went hard. Alexander Hamilton's whole shtick was that he wrote like he was running out of time, and that worked out pretty well for him until the whole wife cheating, son dying, duel losing stuff happened. But the average Joe isn't built for the obsessive republic building style of writing like Hamilton was, so what I would recommend is to take a page from Burr and wait for it, because good writing takes time. I don't know if that really made sense, but I've been reliving my Hamilton phase recently, so let me have this one please. Also, if you're feeling spicy, you should probably develop a good writing sense, which means gaining experience, having perspective, and accepting feedback. That's my philosophy, at least. You can take it or leave it, doesn't matter much to me. But at the very least, it would help save some money because icing is getting expensive. Freaking inflation, man.